fellow Americans.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You've indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compelled. Well, okay, compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the President now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the Major's. The Major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the President have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. slightly above your pay grade, to decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've already
still in
done.
Parliament... There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we're still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. You get NIH, one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among animals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's send Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It is molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That
you
is
can't
not...
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth. You are the one.
Time is expired, but I will allow the witness to...
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result in SARS-CoV-2.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
And you implying...
Senator Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Wednesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
So glad to have you here. And on this show, we try to connect the dots towards the awakening, trying to find all of the disparate pieces and pull them together, pull the threads and cut through all of the BS propaganda that's going on right now. And so we're going to cover a lot of big stories tonight on the show, a lot of stories that you're not going to see in the mainstream media. We're going to talk about why this Ukrainian spring offensive, fall offensive that we kept hearing about has been delayed. It seems like it's been delayed indefinitely, and yet President Zelensky has a new message, which is all-out war with Russia. Total victory for Ukraine is the only solution to how this ends. But we're going to look at their new recruitment tactics and all of the craziness right now. And meanwhile, the House of Representatives in the United States is like literally trying to pass legislation that says the only way this ends is if Russia is totally finished.
And why would they do that? We're going to break it down. It's a crazy story. Speaking of crazy story, stop me if you've heard this one before.
Okay.
Biolabs are not secure in a war zone.
Stop.
Okay. I mean, I didn't really mean it because we have a show to do, but we're going to tell you where that is happening. Here's a clue. It's Sudan, war-torn Sudan. We're going to tell you whose interests are there and why this is happening.
Someone in the chat just a few minutes ago said the intro is too long on our show, meaning like the 30-minute intro we have. Remember, we are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So that intro is just a warm-up. That's an intro for you to just join us, get settled, get ready, get all the alerts sent out from YouTube, which takes 10, 15, 20 minutes for them to send out those alerts. So we are prompt. We start at 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to join us right then, that's when you can. Anyway, we got a lot more news.
You can grab a coffee, visit with other people, join the community, meet people.
Yeah, we got a great community over here that's all hanging out on Rumble and YouTube. So, you know, it's not too long. It's just right. Just like the Three Little Bears. Redacted starts right now. I'd also mention investigative journalist Sonia Elijah is going to be joining us as well because of these Pfizer documents. The new Pfizer documents from April have been released, and they were hoping that you wouldn't notice what's in them. She's going to break down. This is breaking news. We're going to look through these documents. It's really, really startling, really startling stuff. But first, we have a newsletter. It publishes every morning, and it's like all of the cool kids. Like when you go to the mall, like when you go to the food court at the mall, right? You're just walking around. You go to Hot Topic or Spencer's Gifts, all of the kids are hanging out and they're all talking about the Redacted newsletter. It's amazing. I'm just blown away at how the kids love the newsletter. So
much so that I was thinking we should start quizzing our kids. When I was in journalism school, we would get weekly quizzes about like what was in the news that week from the San Francisco Chronicle. And we'd have tests about it. We should do that
with our kids. Make our kids read the newsletter.
And ask if they've see if they've been reading.
So every morning we publish it around 6:30, 7 a.m. Eastern time. It's totally free. You can all you need to do is go to redacted.inc, not .com, and just put in your email address. You'll receive a welcome email from me, just Clayton at redacted.inc. And all you need to do is verify your email. And then tomorrow morning when we publish Thursday's newsletter, you'll get it first thing in your inbox. We cover the markets. We cover a couple of things you might have missed overnight and about 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day. And you can read it, like I said, in about 5 or 10 minutes. You'll be more informed. And we try to cover stories you're not going to really see in the mainstream media. So it's a way to kick off your day. Plus, it's a way for us to stay in contact with you because we've been banned and blocked on YouTube before multiple times. And we have no way of communicating with you. They won't let us make a community post. They won't let us pin a comment. They won't let us do anything. So by having the newsletter, we're able to send you an email and say, hey, here's what happened. That's why we're also on Rumble, etc. So anyway, sign up for the newsletter. It's totally free. That's the best thing that's the best advice. That's my advice on this Wednesday.
Okay, very good. I think you can say those things. Sometimes, as we think through the rules of what we can say on certain platforms and what are the rules around the SEC, I think you can say, we can't give you financial advice, we can't give you medical advice, but we can give you advice to read the newsletter. That's right. Thank you for signing up. Ragni donated something. I missed it. Sorry. Remember, if you sign up for the channel, subscribe to the channel. Oh, Riyadh Esop, your name gets on this board. right as we are speaking. It's in real time. We appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, something big and strange is happening between Ukraine and NATO right now. You can kind of feel it in the air, can't you? And in November of 2022, you'll remember this, right? Ukraine was set to launch a massive offensive against Russia. We kept hearing about it, right? The guns had arrived. The U.S. HIMARS rockets were there. 155 millimeter shells were there. They were stocked up. CNN's intelligence state mouthpiece, Jim Sciutto, was telling us a big offensive was coming. Remember his tweets? And then, of course, he was on CNN talking about it at the same time. Scoop, Ukrainian forces have begun shaping operations in South Ukraine to prepare the battlefield for a significant Ukrainian counteroffensive. 2 senior Pentagon officials briefed on the intel. Tell me, right? This was all over CNN, but then something happened. The offensive got delayed. Why? What actually happened? Total silence on this. Crickets. Why? Why was this delayed? Well, we're connecting the dots tonight, trying to pull this thread for you. Just as Ukraine was trying to launch a big offensive, NATO was quietly telling Zelensky that they weren't ready. In fact, according to RT, a full breakdown of what is known about the status of Ukraine's much-hyped counteroffensive against Russia, the lack of personnel has been the biggest problem. Their soldiers were killed. No one was around to man these weapons, these tanks, these HIMARS, these howitzers. NATO's saying, you're not ready. You need more soldiers. Well, it seems that didn't sit well with Ukraine, and then suddenly this happened. Recall? Right at the same time, oddly timed, all of this happened at the same time. A missile hits Poland. Wow. How did that happen all of a sudden? Neocons spring into action. Blame Russia. Remember this?
Oh, yeah.
The moment this Poland story broke, of course, independent journalists had confirmed the blasts were from fallen Ukrainian S-300 air defense weapons. The shell casings matched precisely. The Pentagon said they have no evidence it's Russia at all. Russia said, nope, our shells don't look like that. In fact, just 40 kilometers away sits one of the most powerful NATO radar satellites in all of Europe, called the RAT-31DL, according to the Military Observer. This is what it is. It's an advanced L-band solid-state phased array. They knew exactly where this missile came from the moment that Ukraine fired the damn thing. Then a short time later, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky sprang into action, of course, demanding that NATO respond and strike Moscow.
10 мільйонів українців без світла, найбільше станом на цю хвилину на Харківщині, Житомирщині, Київщині, Львівщині. Львів та деякі інші міста призупиняли постачання тепла. По всій країні проблеми зі зв'язком та інтернетом. Внаслідок ударів автоматика сьогодні відключила кілька атомних блоків на 2 станціях. Це прораховані наслідки, і ворог точно знав, що робить. Ось це відповідь від Росії для Індонезії, Індії, Китаю та усіх інших країн, які говорили про те, що війну треба закінчувати. Росія каже світу, що хоче продовжувати.
He says they hit Poland, so we need to respond. NATO needs to respond fiercely.
This was back when it seemed President Biden understood the questions he was being asked. And when a reporter had asked him, do you think this was Russia? He said the evidence doesn't support that. So this was when we started to see a first sort of break in the alliance between Ukraine and the U.S.
That's right. And clearly a desperate move because everyone else knew that this wasn't the case. And we're getting lies about, we were getting lies then and we're getting lies now about how many men have actually been recruited to fight in Ukraine. So personnel has been the issue here. Like, why haven't we seen this vaunted offensive that we've been hearing about? We've been sending all the money. We've been sending all the weapons. Like, what's the issue here? Do you want American soldiers more than the thousands that are purportedly already there on the ground? The German soldiers, the Polish soldiers? Like, how many more NATO soldiers do you need right now? Because there doesn't seem to be much of an appetite for that. So what Ukraine and NATO are telling us is that Ukraine now has assembled 200,000 fighters. That's what they're telling us. That all of their recruitment efforts, they've got 200,000 fighters. Just wrap your head around the amount of people that is, and does that number sound correct to you? It does not sound right to me at all. In fact, analysts think it's a total lie.
Why? Because you think they don't have that many people left?
Well, as RT reports in this, it brings up a good number. Think about the amount of people, the amount of soldiers that were put together as a coalition to invade Iraq. Not even on the same level as that. Not even close to 200,000, right?
You need to give us the answer, because are you saying it's too low or too high?
It's way too high. It's way too high. They don't have 200,000. I mean, maybe you think that they do. I don't. 200,000 fighters that they now have been able to, all of these recruitment efforts have gotten together.
Well, between 200,000 and 300,000 was the number that we were told were amassing the border between Iraq and Kuwait when the Iraq War I was sold to us. And that, I guess, sounded formidable enough for us to agree to go to war. So I don't know. I think the average person can't wrap their head around what is needed and doesn't understand that military offensive language.
Well, and of course, the analysts that we've had on this show think that those numbers are total bullshit, right? And also think that the numbers of casualties that we've been told are also total garbage, right?
But you're not telling us. Is
what
it total
are you asking?
bullshit in that it's inflated or deflated?
Inflated. I think I've been very clear about that. Have I not?
No.
They're telling us that
you
the number...
You just keep saying, like, oh, that's so outrageous. And
the
you
number
don't tell me what
I'm telling you the number is 200,000 and it's total bullshit.
Okay, but it could be bullshit because it's too high or bullshit.
Can you guys get some Q-tips out here? No, Philip and David left.
Okay. I don't know what you're leading me towards.
Well, I'm saying anyway, 200,000. They're telling us 200,000 in these recruitment efforts. I think it's total garbage.
I love when we ask them to settle our marital disputes. What are you saying?
Yeah. I mean, my way of handling it would be I've got mute buttons for everybody, and I'll just mute you guys, and we'll cut to David, and he can interpret.
200,000. 200,000 is a high number. It's total garbage. Getting ready for this offensive. Those numbers are total bullshit. Let me be very clear. Those numbers are total garbage. Remember, they're too high. Oh my God. Remember when Ursula von der Leyen let slip that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers had been killed? Of course, then they edited out the video that we showed you side by side of what the original video looked like, where she let slip how many soldiers had been killed. Even that number was low, but they edited it out on the video they ended up releasing. If you need a reminder, here's that video.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought death, devastation, and unspeakable suffering. We all remember the horrors of Bucha. It is estimated that more than 20,000 civilians and more than 100,000 Ukrainian military officers have been killed so far. Russia must pay for its horrific crimes.
Notice that edit? Conveniently that they left that out. They don't want people to know about it. It's total lies, of course. That's why the Western media now are proudly showing off how many women and transgender soldiers are joining the Ukrainian army. Here's trans soldier Ashton Cirillo, who joined up with the Ukrainian army, was a war correspondent and said, I'm joining up with the Ukrainian military. There's all sorts of effusive articles written about Ashton Cirillo. Western media writing up big articles about this soldier and big front page stories about all the women that are joining up in Ukraine right now. The role Ukraine's women are playing a key role in the fight against Russia. I love they pick the pretty girl and they put some makeup on her or whatever. Trying to make her look as glamorous as possible in these roles. And then
it's worth remembering, though, that at least women had the choice. Men of fighting age could not leave Ukraine when fighting began. So they didn't have a choice. Women could at least take their kids and go. And so when we think about who was in the front line, who's left, there were plenty of men between what were the ages 35 and 60, I believe, in that range. That had
could trans women leave?
To go first.
I don't know.
I don't
That's
know.
A good question.
Interesting if you could gender ID out of the country.
Now I'm a woman. I know you're recruiting all these men and men have to do it. So guess what? I'm a woman. Hey, it works in Scotland. Maybe it'll work in Ukraine. I don't know. Meanwhile, here's more headlines. Fighting while female. They're so happy to be holding rocket launchers. How gender dynamics are shaping the war in Ukraine. All of these articles from USA Today to, the BBC to The Guardian. Mainstream media doing full propaganda about how great it is that Ukraine is using women. Watch.
They are new faces on the front lines of the war in Ukraine, female snipers. And while duty didn't call for them, they still loaded up and lined up. Our Inez de Lucatera sat down with one of them to discuss her passion for the battlefield and beyond.
Passion for the battlefield.
By now, she's gained a few nicknames. punisher of Russians and Ukrainian Joan of Arc.
I like Jeanne d'Arc, history Jeanne d'Arc. Yeah. And a lot of people said that she was a ginger like me.
Okay. Eugenia Emerald has become somewhat of an icon in Ukraine, fighting on the front lines as a sniper, the only woman in her unit.
Yeah. So notice the propaganda there. But the real story is being...
Also, that seems incredibly unsafe, is like putting on social media images of where you are.
Yeah, here I am on Instagram. Here's my unit. I'm a sniper.
Perfectly framed, too.
Right.
I mean, once... Clayton's brother-in-law is in NOAA Corps and had sent something that was like a whale or something, like out on a ship, and Clayton shared it somehow, and we got in trouble for that. It was like, do not share, because you can't. Why is that allowed?
Yeah,
these beauty shots of
he was on a ship,
bad as it is.
which is a branch of the military, right? Exactly.
Like it literally was like a dolphin. Go ahead.
How come we're not seeing on any of that footage of her actually firing a gun? Like, why is there no, there's no gunfire being heard. If it's so bad over there, where's all that?
No. And then, of course, the other videos and photos that we've shown are women holding wooden guns, like in the training and all the training montages. But of course, the real story is being hidden here. The Ukraine military is being paid by NATO and the United States to go out and grab men off the streets who are of fighting age. Young men, old men, like this guy going to the market to get food. He's handed a summons from soldiers who are out looking for men.
Что, не успел таки приехать, пойти на рынок и уже повестку вручили.
Yeah, so there's the summons in his hand. And these guys are paid by Western taxpayers. You are paying for these guys to have men be pulled off the streets and thrown into the meat grinder. Like, this is what this is. Fight to the very last Ukrainian. That's exactly what's happening. These press gangs going out grabbing boys as young as 16, even younger, off the streets. Take a look at this. Here's, hey, are you of fighting age? No, I'm not fighting. I'm not fighting. You see these families there standing. Well, fine. Well, we're taking you then. We're taking you, and we're going to take you right into the meat grinder. Just awful. Just awful. Picking them up and going. Women are now, by the way, fighting off these recruitment thugs, swarming them so boys have time to get away. Watch this. Women are sort of this is like the new tactic. Moms and women are like coming together around these thugs, and they're basically like, hey, you can't do this. Watch. So the women sort of swarm them, and then they're able to get away, like these thugs that come out and grab these people off the streets.
Don't mess with the mama bears.
Exactly. And some there's no women around, and so the men get dragged away like this. We are showing. Yeah, so this is what happens. But not everyone gets away with it. These thugs dragging them, kicking and screaming, and they go then to die on the front lines. This week, a new McDonald's opened in eastern Ukraine. People lined up to get a burger for the first time at this new McDonald's. The Ukrainian military then showed up. Look at this. Look at the Ukrainian military showing up here, looking for men, handing out summons to report for duty while they're just waiting to get in line. So there's a big line of people, and they're walking up. Oh, you came out of the house. Here you go. You better report for duty. You better get down there. A woman yesterday shopping with her 2 young boys accosted by soldiers trying to drag her out of the car to get her 2 teenage boys back that were in the back seat of the car. Watch this.
Не имеете права. Нет, Золотой, не имеешь права. Не имеешь права. Нет, полицию сюда. Давай.
And the female police officer shows up, says, this is our area. What are you doing here? This is our turf. What are you doing here? And the 2 boys are in the back seat of the car. And look at the mom is like, no, you're not getting my boys. No. Look at him holding his gun. We're grabbing your guys. We're grabbing them. We're going to throw them into the meat grinder for NATO. America wants it. America wants this proxy war, so we need your boys.
Can you imagine how scary that is?
And these women all crowd around him. Get out of here. Get out of here. He's reaching through the window to try to grab this kid. And then it's not enough.
They're trying to block her car.
And then not enough. He puts the spike strips down behind the car, like as well. Like, oh, you think you're going to drive away? Here's some spike strips. That'll pop your tires. This is what we're dealing with now. A group of women swarming these guys to protect these men right now. So instead of negotiating peace, Zelensky last night pulled out a brand new T-shirt for his from his spring wardrobe and says Russia must lose. This is the plan. There is no other goal in our new offensive that we're about to launch. Russia must lose. Watch.
Росія має програти. Іншої мети у світу бути не може. Бо все інше – це програш життя, це програш права, це програш, власне, світу.
So that's what it is. So instead of pulling people off the streets, Russia launches a new recruitment video yesterday, not asking for women or transgender people or 14-year-old boys. Their new video, this is Russia's video that just was released, is very clear exactly what they want. They want men only. Watch.
Not gonna lie, that's a little intimidating.
That's like the tale of two recruitments right there. Yeah. Like, here you go, be a man and we'll pay you this amount of money. Join up. Join. Yeah. This is what you want to be a man? Join. Like, okay. Wow.
It's so like a CrossFit ad.
You know, and to sort of wrap it up.
I hate war and all that stuff, but that makes me want to join almost.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, it's quite intimidating.
It is, but I just think that's the sentiment though. Like there's people that would really hit. You know, like, oh my gosh, I could be a hero, or I could be, you know.
Like, get him.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay.
People are like, I see people in the chat. Got me in the feels. Got me in the feels. Yeah. Got me in the man feels. But it's just a tale of two stories right now. One, you know, here's what we're being told about these recruitment numbers, about this spring offensive, about the personnel, about these delays and why this was happening. We were supposed to see this at the end of August. NATO saying, you're not ready. We don't have the numbers. We don't have the manpower to put in place to use for this heavy equipment. Now we know the trainings, of course, are happening in the United States. They're happening in Germany. They're ramping up as much as they can. And we'll sort of wrap it up with this, which is the House of Representatives now rolling out legislation, a new bill that would push for Russia to have a total, or Ukraine to have victory. Like there'd be American legislation that the only way this ends, this was the bill before Congress, that would demand Ukrainian victory.
This comes from South Carolina Representative Joe Wilson, who's introducing a resolution that would declare that it is U.S. policy for Ukraine to take back its land and declare victory over Russia.
So U.S.
That makes
policy.
It U.S. policy. So, you know, there is no policy for all kinds of things that may be a priority for Americans, but this absolutely would be a policy, a foreign policy priority. Well, why would they do that? Because then there would be no more debate, because we continue to give these chunks of money and weapons and packages of aid. There would be no need to tell us any longer. If it was U.S. policy, it would just be an open checkbook.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We've got more news to get to here on your Wednesday. Why are there biolabs in Sudan? And why is the United States behind it? Well, we're going to get to the bottom of these biolabs in Sudan. What the hell is happening on that country, which is on fire right now? And another country on fire, Haiti, exploding in violence this week. And the United Nations this afternoon doubling down on its position to invade Haiti. So they're not backing down. Russia says, no, the reason Haiti is a mess in the first place is because of Western countries going in there and meddling. So there was a big fight this afternoon at the United Nations. We're going to bring you that story. Plus, the new Pfizer documents are out. We'll get to all of that and more. But first, I want to tell you about our friends now at Policy Genius, and they're sponsoring today's video. Look, as you get older, you realize, hey, it's not all about me, right? You've got a family, you've got kids, you've got a wife, you've got people in your life that depend on you. That's why it's so important to have life insurance. There's nothing worse than leaving your family with a burden after you pass away. That's not something that you want. And so life insurance might not be something you think about or really want to dive into, but it's incredibly important. And Natali and I set up our life insurance through Policy Genius. It was built to modernize the life insurance industry, to make it incredibly simple to get set up. Their technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $25 per month for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. They have licensed agents that work for you, not the insurance companies. This is so important. That means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees, and your personal details are all private. No wonder they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Natali and I had old life insurance years ago, and we switched to Policy Genius, and we couldn't believe how easy it was to get up and set in a matter of minutes. It was amazing. And so we want you to try this right now to start comparing quotes and simplify insurance buying. Check out policygenius.com/redacted. Thanks to Policy Genius for sponsoring this video. We will have links in the comments and the description. Again, it's policygenius.com/redacted. And thanks to Policy Genius for sponsoring this video. So we've got more news to get to here on your Wednesday. I see someone in the chat saying it's not a bio lab, it's a love lab. Someone else saying it's not a bio lab, it's the new Bud Light factory in Sudan. Perhaps it is.
Do you love cholera? Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't?
Right, cholera. I always have cholera in the morning with a little coffee. It's fantastic.
Isn't that what you get on the Oregon
that love
Trail?
in the time of cholera?
Love in the time of cholera.
Yeah, I love collard greens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Collard greens. Someone else said, hey, YouTube is determined to not send me notifications when you guys go live. I don't know what about on Rumble, how you guys on Rumble get notifications or not. On YouTube, do you guys, if you're subscribed to the channel, and you turn on a little bell notification, you guys should get notifications when we go live. Are you guys getting the notifications when we go live? That's why we do that 30-minute countdown.
I sometimes get mine days later, literally days later.
So you guys, YouTube also has a thing now where you have to hover over the bell and you have to select all. Otherwise, they're still making the decision for you. So if you click the bell, it's not enough. You have to hover over it and then select all. Then you should get notified.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, what the bleep is happening in Sudan? Why are bioweapons labs now unsecured? The World Health Organization is warning that biolabs in Sudan are this is their quote, huge biological risk because Sudanese fighters have seized at least one biolab in the capital of Khartoum. Now, where have we heard this before? War zone, biolab, escaped virus. This is very familiar from the not too distant past in Ukraine. The biolabs we're talking about right now, there's just one in particular. It's called the National Public Health Laboratory in Khartoum. Who is behind this lab? Well, hard to say because take a look at their website. When you click the About Me page.
Page not found.
Interesting.
That's a great website from like 1997.
Yes.
Like built with a Netscape browser or something.
Speaking of 1997, I searched this in the Wayback Machine to see what did it say before this error code. Is it recent? Was something pulled down because of this compromise of the lab? It seems that this error code has been there since at least 2019, but I can't really be sure because the Wayback Machine is kind of slow and hard to use. But I could tell at least that it's not a recent removal of something. But the homepage does list partners such as the World Health Organization, Brazil, China, Japan, the United Arab Emirates, Save the Children, the World Bank, the United Nations, and the UN World Food Program, just to name a few. So more on this lab in just a minute, but let's just back up and talk about what is happening in Sudan, because fighting has been raging for several weeks. And on Monday, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia brokered a 72-hour ceasefire in Sudan. Seems to be holding up. But the WHO is now saying that one side of the fighting parties control this biolab that holds samples of cholera, measles, polio, and other infectious diseases. They're not saying which side. Here is Nima Saeed Abid, who the WHO representative in Sudan, telling us exactly what he's worried about with these labs.
That is extremely, extremely dangerous because we have polio isolates in the lab, we have measles isolates on the lab, we have cholera isolates in the lab. So there is a huge biological risk.
Oh, great.
Sounds good. It was a news piece that added that music, not me. I don't need to get any more dramatic than what he already said. Doesn't need dramatic music. It's already bad. Philip, who's worked in labs, do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Do you like polio?
I have no particular love of polio or cholera, but I mean the research that goes on in these biolabs is usually very necessary. It's like got public health in mind. Having them fall into the wrong hands is extremely dangerous because some of the most dangerous things on the planet are in there. Dangerous to humans.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like these biolabs are scary places if they're not rigidly controlled.
And we set them up. It's odd, right, that we set these things up in these countries that we destabilize. It's amazing why, Ukraine has 46 biolabs that are funded in large part by the United States government. And of course, we've tracked and trailed all of to Hunter Biden as well on this and his involvement in this. Just Jenny wrote on our YouTube page earlier today, one of our viewers, Just Jenny, and said, is it any coincidence that Sudanese rebels have taken over a biolab with the very polio viruses that Bill Gates has said will compromise the next pandemic or comprise the next pandemic?
It doesn't feel coincidental.
No.
But nothing does anymore. So, who and what were in that lab and how long have these biolabs been working with all of these other countries? We're going to get back to that in a minute. But first, a little bit about this conflict. Here is Kenyan writer and activist David John Bwakali. He boils down the conflict, I think, far better than I could. So I'm going to leave it to him to explain exactly what's going on in Sudan right now.
Here is why you should care about the fighting that is going on in Sudan. What's happening there is more than meets the eye, and it's time for the world to discuss the actual truth of what is going on there. America and Russia are at it again, just as they did 60 years ago during the Cold War when they fought proxy wars right here in Africa, leading to the death of thousands of innocent Africans. They are at it again in Sudan, fighting a proxy war. Let me explain. Two factions of the Sudanese military are fighting each other. One of them is led by Lieutenant General Mohammed Hamdan, head of the paramilitary group known as Rapid Support Forces. The other faction is led by the Sudanese Army Chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. So why are they fighting? This is where Russia and USA come into the picture. You see, in the last couple of months, Russia has finalized a deal with Sudan to establish Russia's naval base in Sudan's Red Sea coast. America is not too happy with that. Actually, they're furious. America's ambassador to Sudan, John Godfrey, expressly warned Sudan not to seal that deal with Russia, but they're going ahead and doing just that. And so when the paramilitary unit began fighting the other faction of the army. That wasn't happening in a vacuum. The big problem is that you're not going to hear this in the mainstream media. Neither are you going to hear a lot of African governments voicing this, which is very unfortunate because Africa must learn to speak its truth and stand on this truth, because truth will set you free. So it is left to the African people, we the African people, to speak this truth and tell America and Russia to get off Africa, to get their hands off Africa. The days of the Cold War, the days of the shenanigans of the Cold War are completely over, and they cannot fight proxy wars in Africa at the expense of innocent African lives. That has to stop. The fighting in Sudan must stop. The puppet masters must stop their evil, diabolic games.
So I thought that was beautifully said. I think that it's important to remember what the conflicting, who is supporting conflicting sides at this moment. Now, if you watch the mainstream media, what will they tell you is that there are two fighting sides, and it has to do with, them overthrowing a dictator and then now fighting to put a democracy in place. It is absolutely not that simple, but at least now we have an idea of who the two sides are and who they're backed by. And he's right. Sudan has, in fact, been moving forward with Russian projects, and the U.S. is opposing this. Here is a helpful timeline of how that opposition has shaped up in the last year. We found this on Twitter, and it seems...
This is from V. Rosen.
Yes. And it seems like a good timeline of what's been happening. And I've seen some sort of, maybe not comical, but like comments like, when, the U.S. and Victoria Nuland come in, you got a civil war coming on your hands. And that does seem to be what happened, because just last year, the U.S. appointed an ambassador to Sudan after 25 years of not having one. That ambassador warned Sudan against finalizing the Russian naval base. Then Antony Blinken urged Sudan to consider U.S. support for the rapid formation of a civilian-led transitional government. Then the UN brokers framework agreement between Sudan's military leaders and leading pro-democracy parties. Then just in December, again, Blinken threatens a travel ban for Sudanese who endanger framework agreement deal. Fast forward to February, Sudan confirms the deal for the Russian naval base. The key players are Lavrov and Burhan. February 16th, the Biden administration sends $288 million in humanitarian aid to Sudan. Then, a few weeks later, Victoria Nuland visits Sudan to discuss democracy.
Oh, whenever she shows up.
And then just a few weeks later, conflict escalates between these two military groups, and the U.S. evacuates Sudan. So we can see how quickly this has escalated due to the severe fighting between conflicts between Russia and the U.S. So now the U.S. and Saudi Arabia say they have brokered a ceasefire, but on whose behalf? Whose interests are they working for? Can the U.S. lobby on behalf of the Sudanese people? If they had their interests at heart, they would have said, you brokered this deal with Russia. We didn't have anything to do with it, so we're going to stay out of it, if that's what you guys want to do, right?
Right.
That they're not doing that. They're actually actively working to thwart projects that the Sudanese government has decided is good for them. Is that any of our business? Who is Saudi Arabia representing here? They're in between allies, between the U.S. and China. So, who are they working to protect, or who are they working for? I don't know. It's an interesting bedfellows that we've got the U.S. and Saudi Arabia trying to broker these peace deals. And now finally, who has biolabs to protect? Well, the U.S. has had major interest in biolabs in Sudan since the late 90s, when President Clinton bombed the shit out of a Sudanese pharmaceutical factory called Al-Shifa. This factory made medicines. In fact, it made over half of the medicines that the Sudanese people relied upon. Clinton falsely claimed that they were making chemical weapons, and he attacked as a retaliation for Osama bin Laden's bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. The Clinton administration said that they, quote, had soil samples taken outside the plant, and that they showed that there had been a presence of a substance known as EMTA, whose only function was to make nerve gas VX. The plant, they said, was heavily guarded and it showed a suspicious lack of ordinary commercial activities. They also claimed that Osama bin Laden had financial interests in the plant. All of that was a lie.
Of course.
None of that was true. Now, incidentally, in 2006, the owner of this factory sued the U.S. government for bombing his factory. But the case was dismissed in court because the government won its request for a dismissal for, quote, failure to establish waiver of sovereign immunity. So that guy never really got that far, but he, in his documents, said that he could prove that the United States bombed his private property, his business, and that they did so under false pretenses.
Kal-El in our chat, thank you for the super chat, Kal-El, says, one has to think, Clayton, does another proxy war keep Sudan impoverished and run down so that corruption and U.S. control will be easy for American companies to plunder Sudan's resources? You hit the nail on the head, Kal-El.
Yeah.
Superman. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we do in destabilizing these countries. The same thing we're going to talk about Haiti in just a moment.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Now, thankfully, after this factory that made half of the country's medicines was bombed to smithereens, the United States stepped in with private companies to help get the people of Sudan medicine. American pharmaceutical companies happily stepped in after the U.S. government bombed their competition. Which brings us to this question. So we know now there are American interests in pharmaceuticals in Sudan. We know now that there is some kind of biolab that has been compromised and is controlled by one side of fighting forces. Do we know if there are American interests there? We don't really know that yet. This, again, sort of though would parallel what's happening in Ukraine, where Russian forces insist that they are finding American bioweapons projects in Ukraine, in the territory that they are taking over actively still. In these Russian-backed forces, is it now the Russian-backed forces in Sudan that is going into this lab, and then maybe you're going to tell us something else that the United Nations is going to pretend not to hear or go like this about? We don't know, but it's happening in Ukraine, so it would be quite coincidental. And can we be sure that the U.S. interest in this lab was on the up and up? Was it gain of function? We don't know. We do know, though, that the U.S. National Institute of Health has, since this conflict broke out, pulled down information from its website, linking it to Ebola research in Sudan involving monkeys. Here is what was on the NIH. Now, remember, the NIH is an American health organization. It was the one related to Fauci before he retired. This article it still shows up in your search results. If you search for it, it makes like you could find it. Then if you go to click it, here is what you'll find. Page is not available anymore. So why are they removing these projects with Sudanese labs from their website so recently, especially this one's from 2016? This article is about experimental vaccines. No, this next one I'm going to show you is about an experimental vaccine on macaques for Sudan virus. But the press release, am I saying that wrong?
Is it macaws?
Macaques.
Macaques? Okay, sorry.
It's a monkey.
It's a primate, right?
Yeah. So not macaw. I was thinking macaw, but no, macaques.
Okay.
Type of monkey, right?
Excuse me, I'm not up on my zoology pronunciation. So this press release says that the NIH has been funding this project, but the research was done in Montana. It was on the Sudan virus, but in a lab in Montana. So we don't know right now. We know that a biolab that had viruses is not secure. We know that the lab had known viruses, but we don't know if there are any gain of function projects going on there. I'm thinking maybe if they're sort of putting up or taking down these connections, possibly. We don't know whose side is in control of the lab, but we know that the WHO is freaking out about it. And we do know that the people of Sudan are absolutely caught in the crosshairs of global powers and proxy wars, and that's not news.
So someone in the chat saying maybe that the website, the page isn't down. It's that they're not letting you connect to it. which I don't know what the difference is. If you can't connect to it, the page doesn't.
Well, it's kind of like the perfect
I'm just saying
crime. They put these things in these places where people are, and with no congressional oversight, there's no oversight they have to follow there. There's probably less regulations on safety in these places, and if it gets released, what do we care? They're desert people.
Right. Yeah. Let's test it over there. I mean, it's just exactly what Adam Schiff said, right? That's why we fight Russia over there, so we don't have to fight them here. We have biolabs over there, so if stuff gets out, well, it's the Ukrainians, right? We don't care about them at all. We don't care about their children. In fact, it's just like in Sudan today, we now know in Ukraine, Russia is saying that the United States is using Ukraine's soil. We have now confirmed that the depleted uranium munitions have arrived and are being used in Ukraine. Who's going to clean up that soil? The United States is like, we're not touching that. It's going to be irradiated soil for years. We don't care about those people. We don't care about the country will be rendered useless. We don't care about Sudan. We don't care about any of these places where we meddle in it. All we care about is the United States, and even that is questionable at best.
Yeah. So this seems like a conflict that is going to require attention for the foreseeable future. It's not going to go away in any kind of easy. The media may lose their interest in it, but let's us not.
Yeah. We've got more news to get to here on this Wednesday. We're going to look at the violence in Haiti and why the United Nations is doubling down on wanting to invade that country. Russia speaking out in the United Nations this afternoon saying, hey, the reason that country is a mess right now is because the West has been meddling in it. The United States, Canada, and the UK are ready to put their invasionary force inside of Haiti to stop the violence. Wonder where that violence came from. We'll get to the bottom of that. We're also going to look at these new Pfizer documents that are just out, the new Pfizer document dump. They've been releasing documents every month or so. They were supposed to not be released for, I think, 75 years, but thanks to a court order, we get to see it. And investigative journalist Sonia Elijah is going to be joining us to analyze the latest documents here in just a moment. But we'll get to that first. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Nugenics, because if you're ready to boost your testosterone, get your old self back, our sponsor Nugenics Total T is offering a complimentary bottle when you text 231-231 and enter the keyword redacted. That's right. If you feel like, I'm not in the shape that I once was, I've got a bit of the dad bod, you're feeling less like your old self, lower energy, well, guess what? Turns out it was the natural loss of testosterone. You decided to do something about it. You got Nugenics. You now feel amazing as a result. If you've tried it, I've actually heard from a lot of you who've tried it, and you feel energized. You're working out like you used to. That's great. Adding muscle again, get your old self back. So it's really, really easy because, when you're younger, you were at your peak of your testosterone production. Well, not so much anymore as you get a little bit older. You want more energy, you want more power, you need to try Nugenics Total T. Their testosterone booster with testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your life. It'll help you look and feel like the man you want to be. And now, get a complimentary bottle when you text 231-231, enter the keyword redacted. Nugenics Total T, has science-backed key ingredients to safely maximize your free and total testosterone levels, help you increase muscle mass, skyrocket your performance as you age. Nugenics is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC and Walmart. And it's the #1 doctor-recommended testosterone boosting brand, period. Nugenics Total T can help re-energize your life, help you get back to be the powerful, confident person that you used to be. All right, so here you go. You get a complimentary bottle of Nugenics Total T when you text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Text now, get a bottle of Nugenics Thermo X, which is their newest, most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you lose fat fast, get lean fast, absolutely free. Text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Again, text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. #1 doctor recommended brand by primary care physicians based on an independent study. There you go. Check it out. Nugenics Total T. Suddenly, all of the major newspapers and television stations are covering the violence that has erupted this week in Haiti. That's odd because they usually ignore Haiti. And then at the same time, the United Nations holding a Security Council meeting and once again pushing for the invasion of Haiti. Not surprising, we're hearing from the United Nations with all of this international coverage of this gang violence which has erupted this week. So what in the world is happening in Haiti? Is it all part of propaganda narrative? Dan Cohen, our redacted correspondent in Washington, joins us now. Dan, what's going on in Haiti? First of all, let's start with the violence. What happened here?
Well, the videos are pretty gruesome, and anyone who wants to see them can just look on Twitter or Telegram, look on social media. We're not going to show them here, but so people understand what actually happened. 14 suspected gang members, reported gang members, were found in a public transportation vehicle in the Port-au-Prince neighborhood of Canapé Vert. The police were tipped off and found weapons, ammunition with these gang members, and they arrested them, took them into the police substation, but a mob, the people outside, actually entered the police station, took them into the street, overpowered them, took them into the street, killed them, and then burned their bodies. So it's a very gruesome scene, but this is essentially what is happening now as the situation in Haiti continues to deteriorate. There's no the state services are lacking, hardly existent, and the police are weak and overwhelmed and incapable of really taking on the gang problem. So people are essentially taking their own safety and well-being into their own hands. Often it gets ugly and messy. It's sort of vigilante or mob justice. And it's the kind of thing that typically happens in the Haitian countryside in years and decades past, where there has been little state services and little security. So when someone was involved in criminal activity, then the people would get together and essentially do exactly what we saw happen in Port-au-Prince. So not terribly surprising, but absolutely pretty horrifying images. But this is, again, what we can come to expect. There's also, we can look at an incident back in June of 2022. There's a police commissar named Jean-Ernest Muscadin who he executed a criminal on the spot. So with just the weakening of the state and the police overall, this is what inevitably kind of happens. At the same time, that happened on Monday morning, and on Wednesday, the UN Security Council met to discuss Haiti, and you had the usual suspects, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, and the UN Secretary General representative all pushing for intervention, a military intervention in Haiti. Listen.
I would like to emphasize the urgent need for deployment authorized by the Security Council of an international specialized force.
The Haitian government and its people have asked for international support to address violence and insecurity.
All the people that we have spoken to in Haiti, as well as agencies outside, have emphasized this one point: the restoration of security.
We recognise the need for a response to Haiti's request for further international assistance.
France issues an urgent appeal here to the international community to ratchet up its efforts. Insecurity in Port-au-Prince has reached levels comparable to those of an armed conflict.
So when did the Haitian people, Dan, say, yes, we want intervention? Because our coverage, your coverage in Port-au-Prince, interviewing the people on the street, says they absolutely don't want any U.S. or Canadian intervention, boots on the ground, U.S. military showing up in their country. They just don't want U.S. meddling. They don't want Canadian meddling in their country. So did I miss something here? Did the Haitian people vote to say, yes, please come invade our country?
Yeah, the U.S. and Canadian representatives are completely making up that the Haitian people ever put out any kind of, it was ever put to a vote. Do we want to be invaded by a foreign country? No, that never happened. So that's completely false. And the Haitian government, they said, that requested military intervention, well, it's unelected. It has no popular support. In fact, it's incredibly unpopular. So you have the government of the de facto prime minister, Ariel Henry, who requested foreign military intervention back in October, and he's a puppet of the U.S. So, the United States is firstly lying about what the Haitian people have said, because they never said they want foreign military intervention, and then having, their puppet say, oh yes, my puppet wants military intervention, so therefore the Haitians want military intervention. So a total canard.
Yeah, total canard, total lie. And of course, he's a puppet of the West, so he's going to do their bidding. What is the end game? What is the goal of the United States and Canada in this, and the UK as well, to come in there to, we've talked about it before, I imagine it's to pilfer resources, to keep cheap labor under the thumb of the Western powers, and basically destabilize and run this country? Am I wrong about that? Is that a small summation of what we want?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, they want to maintain the status quo. The old colonial powers are now neo-colonial powers in Haiti. They want sweatshop labor. They want resources. They want to keep people down. And when they begin to organize a little bit, well, it's time to come in with the hammer to make sure that they continue to live in extreme poverty and filth and in desperation. So, behind all of these calls for, we need to help the people of Haiti, are calls are really to maintain the status quo. And that's actually what the Russian mission to the UN said. They said that the situation in Haiti, which is undeniably horrible, is actually a result of U.S. Western neocolonialism. So take a listen to that.
We cannot impose solutions imposed from local Haitian reality, as has often been the case. We see brazen attempts to interfere in the political process in Haiti by using unilateral sanctions against individuals not to the liking of some. The crisis of Haitian statehood is to a large extent the outcome of outside political engineering and neo-colonial policy. Fixing the situation this way is not an option.
So that's what the Russian delegation was saying. That's clearly not something that they wanted to hear, that the result of the violence there, the reason for this violence, is because of Western meddling in this country. Something, though, I wanted to talk about, which struck me, is, like, I have friends sharing these articles with me about the violence this week in Haiti. There's never any coverage of this normally, right? This is radio silence. Why this week? Why coverage of this particular event this week? Suddenly we're getting coverage, and then the UN holds the special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think on one hand, it's the videos of the lynchings went viral, and okay, it's easy news media coverage, but I think there is an agenda at play where the Western media wants, which is essentially U.S. regime media, wants to show the chaos and instability and wanton violence and killings, that, to show that Haiti cannot handle its own affairs internally and needs foreign intervention. It needs, the U.S. and the UK and Canada and the United Nations to come in and, wipe out the gangs and set things straight. Though, of course, the U.S. and the UK and Canada and these powers don't actually want to take out the criminal gangs. They want to take out the one group that is actually resisting against them, which is the G9, which we've covered extensively, led by Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, who the US and UK, Canada, the EU, and the UN have all sanctioned and targeted, the only so-called gang leader they've targeted. And they want to take him out because he represents this organization among Haitians against the criminal activity, kidnapping, robbery, looting, this kind of thing. So you compare this fixation in the media on this event to the total silence on events like the massacre in Delma 6 in Lower Delma that I showed along with my Haiti Liberté colleagues, that we showed in our documentary Another Vision. Watch this segment.
Nous et puis même côté à nous dans caille là, à peine nous fait fin faut manger n'a manger. Moi chita gros jour dimanche. M'a prend petit soupe. Moi 10 garçons entre sur moi azam. Lever m'a fait manger pour yo et quand ça méchant yo entrer sous nous, yo tirer sous nous. Et puis là nous garder nous, yo envahit sous nous, y a tiré sous nous. Et puis nous tous prenons courir sujet. Nèg belé, ensemble nèg Saint-Martin, nèg Riel Maya. Yo pote sous nous, yo assassiné nous, yo boule kay nous. 6 juin, yo boule kay moi. M'a sauvé rien.
So there we heard from victims of a massacre perpetrated by segments of the Haitian National Police, supported by the United States, and in concert with gang members that we never ever hear about. So we get a totally kind of distorted image of what's going on in Haiti, and this is typical of Western media when it wants to manufacture consent for military intervention, regime change, whatever its kind of plans for the country are.
Well, you're not going to see this coverage anywhere else in the mainstream media. Dan Cohen, who's been covering this story for us for a long time now, thank you so much reporting on the violence and the UN moves in Haiti. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Clayton.
And, please share the video with people as well. I had a friend yesterday text me and said, hey, can I share this interview? Can I share this segment on social media? I was like, yes, please. Please, that's one. I mean, this is a free show. This is independent journalism. This is a free show for you to watch on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter. And one way that you can help support and get the message out about independent journalism and what we cover here and, with our team is just to share it. I mean, that's all we ask. If you have someone in your family, you can text it to them, text it to 5 people, text the show to a few people, post it on wherever. Just let them know that, hey, here, if you're looking for an alternative to Fox News right now after Tucker leaves and these other sources, please just share out the show. Again, it's totally free, and that's all we ask of you. And Garrett in our chat was just said, I like what Garrett said here. I said, life is a blessing. We all need to do better. And I love that sentiment, Garrett. Yeah, I mean, just think about this. This woman has a house that the United States and this Western countries come in, they just burn down her house. She can't salvage anything in her house because of Western meddling in these countries. We need to do better. Thank you, Garrett, for that sentiment. Ah, boy. Well, we've got more news to get to. We're going to cover what's going on with these Pfizer documents. Investigative journalist Sonia Elijah is going to be joining us on that story. We should also mention, if you subscribe, like Ludwig just did, your name will pop up here on the big screen on the big redacted board. So thank you for anybody who subscribes on Rumble and on YouTube. And I should mention, we just hit 300,000 subscribers on Rumble. So we're coming for you, YouTube. We're building it up. So thank you to all of you who subscribe on both Rumble and on YouTube. I appreciate it. We're going to be doing our next story exclusively over there because what we're going to talk about with these Pfizer documents, we cannot talk about on YouTube, unfortunately. So you have to come on over if you are interested. You know where to find us because we'll be doing the stream will continue right there. But first, it's no secret. If you're tuned in, experts are predicting a recession heading our way. Layoffs already happening, thousands. You see the volatility in the stock market already, right? I mean, it's kind of crazy what's happening. Layoffs happening, government continuing to print a lot of money. The Fed expected to lower rates in July, signaling a recession and trying to put a tamp down, sort of a soft recession, I guess, is what they're hoping will happen. But again, printing more money. That's why gold and silver searches right now are through the roof because people want to know how can they protect their money. If you've got like $1,000 sitting in US dollars or euros right now, I mean, I can't give you financial advice, but personally, I would want to convert that. If it's sitting in a savings account, I'd want to convert that into precious metals, something that's sustained for 4,000 and 5,000 years. That's what we have done personally. And our friends over at Lear Capital can help you actually get set up with a retirement account where you can self-direct. So if you've got an IRA or an old 401k that's been sitting there for many years that you haven't touched after you left a former job or whatever, you can actually roll that over into a self-directed account, lets you control what you invest in, not a company, not Wall Street. And you can, buy gold, you can buy silver. And right now, Lear Capital is giving up to $15,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified account when you open a qualified account. So call their 800 number right now. They'll get you set up. 1-800-613-3557 or go to learredacted.com. Get your free gold and silver investors guide. Receive up to $15,000 in bonus medals, again, with a qualified purchase. So call 1-800-613-3557. That's the 1-800 number. Or visit the website learredacted.com. All right. So thanks to everyone who's sharing the show with everyone out there, pressing that like button and sharing it all over the place. And thank you for your super chats tonight. We're going to continue our stream right now. This is where we're going to continue it on, right here. Rumble.com/redacted is where we are going to go. Totally up to you what you guys do.
What we're going to talk about there is documents related to what Pfizer knew and when they knew it. This is bombshell type stuff that you're going to want to stick around for. So please, if you would like to hear this information, you know where to find it. We're not asking you, but we're just telling you where it's going to be. Again, the reason we have to be sort of cagey about that is because of certain rules on certain platforms that we're on at this moment that say not only if we say things that violate a terms of service could we get dinged, but also if we sort of point you to other websites that may violate your terms of service. So that is purposely vague. You know why they're doing this. I don't have to spell it out for you. So we want to be careful about, telling you what websites to go to. And also, I mean, think about how, authoritarian that is and terrifying that I can't even tell you, hey, here's this alternative to this type of thing or whatever. Like if it's fascism. It's terrifying. So we're going to tell you where we're going to be. And thank